Salutations, duelists. My name is YGO Strats, legally it's on my birth certificate, and I'm back with another episode of a series that I should have named Why Not Play instead of Why I Play, so as to make it more enticing to a general audience. And actually, as a matter of fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm changing the series name 3 episodes in. Why Not Play, a series where I talk about why I play, but also why you should play the various decks that I'm comfortable with, because everything's better when it's more like me. Bruh. This week, I'm going to focus on Paleozoic, in part because I picked up the deck very recently, and also because my last 2 decks both had Towers-esque monsters as the thumbnail, so I figured why not keep in theme by talking about more monsters who are unaffected by things. Am I an asshole of a duelist? No. It's my opponents who are wrong. So, that said, let's just jump into it. Why do I and why should you play Paleozoic? At the simplest of levels, because you get to make Totally Awesome, which is both one of the best Omni-Negate monsters in the game and one of the best named monsters in the game. I don't care if you disagree on that, because if you do, you are wrong and you can continue to cry about it. This is a fantastic card, and this is an even more fantastic name. You might even say that it's totally awesome. Really though, this deck first appealed to me because while the floor of the deck's skill level is simple enough, toad spam and some back row, how difficult is that? The ceiling for this deck is a lot higher than I had initially anticipated. It's by no means DDD levels of complex, but managing your field and hand so as to maintain advantage and not fall helplessly behind, while also protecting your little paleos from being run over in battle, is easy to fall behind on and punishing as hell if you're bad at it. It's more of a skill-intensive deck, almost like a combo deck disguised as a control deck. Plenty of times, I scratch my face. Plenty of times, the opening play is to set 3 or 4 traps and pass on that. Going first, that can be fine. You can get shit done with 4 back row going first, especially if you open a solid disruption pieces. But going second, that can be intimidating. When the opponent has 7 negates and you're just hoping to chain things in a sequence that you don't die, there's some pressure. And while it can sometimes feel futile setting some cards and facing the absurd boards of modern competitive Yu-Gi-Oh!, the rush you can get if you're able to outplay the opponent with your disruption and then make some rank 2s is something else. And depending on how salty your opponents are and how much you enjoy salt mining, it can be a cathartic experience. The deck was at its most competitive when That Grass Looks Greener was legal, and after its banning, it's definitely fallen off, not just in terms of meta viability, but also as the best trap deck. Eldritch and Altergeist might be the better trap deck in town, but Paleo has one thing those decks don't. Frogs. Chill, man, I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it right now. The frog engine... There's so much cat hair on my nose, I'm going insane. The frog engine pairs perfectly with Paleozoics to the point where it had to be intentional. They are all level 2 aquas, and they're all great at spamming those level 2s for Xyz spam or link climbing. Swap Frog and Ronin Tonin are a match made in heaven, and Dupe Lock is, yeah, somewhat difficult to put on board without, sacrificing an actual board worth building, but it is funny. And it's even more funny if it's backed up by other disruption like Toad and some traps. And that's the big boy worth discussing right now, like I mentioned earlier, Totally Awesome. It's an Omni-Negate that summons frogs from the deck and steals what it negates. Not to mention that it recovers from the grave when sent there, all in one card. This card is a house of a card, and it's definitely satisfying to beat the opponent with their own cards, which is easy to do when you've got the Toad. The best part about the deck, though, is that Toad isn't even the best Xyz monster. At least not if you ask me, or from what I can gather, the majority of people who understand how to play this deck. Opavinia is just... boy howdy. Opavinia's ability to search out the Paleos and to be able to activate them from the hand is phenomenal. And being unaffected by monster effects means that most hand traps don't do anything to it. The card makes the consistency of the deck go through the roof by being able to search out your Paleos, and by allowing you to activate traps from the hand, you can even play around the deck's biggest weakness, back row blowout. By keeping the Paleos in your hand, you're able to keep them safe from cards like Lightning Storm or Feather Duster, while still being able to disrupt your opponent's plays. Opavinia is the throat goat of the deck, a statement that you may find to be as shocking as it is true. Seriously though, look at this thing. It's got that vacuum tube stretch tech going on. It goes for miles. Just ignore the teeth. Moving on, Paleos also have Anomalocaris, who looks mean and is mean. The quick effect pop is never bad, and being unaffected again makes it a problem for most meta threats. What are you gonna do, Appaloosa negate me? Fuck out of here, Glad Beast, stick to Gazaris. Oh, wait, that won't work either. Nor will Borload Savage. It's just an underrated monster in my opinion, even if only because I undervalued it myself before I picked up the deck. And the Paleo traps themselves are solid, or at least enough of them are to still be playable. They've got Karma Cut, Book of Moon, and MST, all native and searchable to their deck. And depending on your preference, you have access to a tiny little mini burial from a different dimension to recover your banished Paleos, a Paleozoic Trade-In, Paleo Foolish Burial, and Paleo Shrink. All solid effects, even if some are admittedly better than others. My condolences go to Paleozoic Eldonia, whose effect is so meaningless I literally didn't mention it after mentioning every other Paleo main deck monster effect. And by monster effect I mean traps, these are traps. There's also the benefit that Paleos trigger off any trap to summon themselves, meaning you're essentially encouraged to play good generic traps and ultimately plus off of. Dimensional Barrier, Ice Dragon's Prism, Infinite Impermanence all make for powerful disruption. And since they can be activated whenever your turn or the opponent's, they make for easy stopping of the opponent on their turn or building your Paleo army for Xyz and Link plays on your turn. As mentioned, the deck is somewhat lackluster at the time of this video's release, and it plays like the mentality from Talladega Nights.
You ain't first, you're last.
Exactly that. Going second is no bueno, but the deck's learning curve is enticing enough to put up with that, at least for me. If the opponent chains an effect to your trap, your Paleo is going to miss timing, and so you need to space out your chains properly to both get your trap effects to resolve as you want and still end up with your board in a playable state. If you're like me and you generally only played combo decks or play combo decks and build a board type of play styles to the point where your friends describe your dueling as, quote, he just jerks off for 5 minutes and wins the game, I really recommend this deck. Like I said earlier, it's a combo deck disguised as a control deck. Control decks are a very different but equally rewarding style of play from combo. Meaningful one-for-ones to deal with the opponent's boards, learning when it's best to Book of Moon or Karma Cut with your Paleos, and managing your resources both on the field as well as in your grave from Paleos and Frogs isn't the easiest thing to do. But as you start to get better, it becomes more and more addicting. And because it's not just a vomit a board and kill the opponent by turn 3 type of deck, duels tend to last longer, which offers more chances for swings and momentum, which is just Yu-Gi-Oh! At its peak. Yeah, it's cool to win with a crazy board that you worked for 14 minutes on, but when both players are engaged and there's a back and forth, it's a much more enjoyable experience. As I said, I only recently started playing this deck, a few months ago, and I only even got into it because I bought some very expensive swap frogs, and I wanted to value my dollar most by getting the most out of them. So I wasn't going into this deck expecting a whole lot, but I found it to be a lot more fun than I expected it to be. And with the exception of Dimensional Barrier, which goes in and out of my build depending on how competitive I'm feeling, the disruptions feel annoying but fair. This is my current build, maining the D barriers because someone in the comments was gonna call me dumb if I don't, and that's really mean, so I'm just gonna prevent that right now. If you don't like those, what I've been doing instead is I throw in a 2 crackdown for the meme, and then an extra Lost Wind. There's a lot of fun cards you can play in this. That's kind of what I love about it too. Waking the Dragon is a hilarious deterrent to blow out spell and trap cards. And I mean, Trap Trick is just perfect for getting out whatever trap you need. I also love Cat Shark just to make totally awesome a 4400 beater because, as I've mentioned multiple times now, I am always a sucker for Unga Bunga Biga Numba. If it sounds interesting, I really recommend you give it a shot. The deck is one that's fun to play and it's not terrible in a competitive sense, even if only at a locals level of play. And overall, I think that is why you should play Paleozoic Frogs. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment and a like if you enjoyed it. Also, if you don't do those 2 things, I will be blocking you and reporting you, as that is a personal attack on my well-being. And as always, Subscribe to YGO Strats so that you too can become a true duelist.
Negate!